A funny thing happens when you buy a movie these days. You hand over your money, you click the button, the receipt arrives, the film appears in your library.
Dear God, it's beautiful.
And for a brief, shining moment, you experience a sensation that previous generations would have recognized instantly. Ownership. It's yours. Until the day it isn't.
Aren't we forgetting one teensy-weensy but ever so crucial little tiny detail?
I own you!
A movie disappears from a digital storefront because licensing agreements expired. A television series vanishes from streaming platforms as if it never existed in the first place. A video game you've played for years is quietly delisted, stranded in digital limbo. A book on your e-reader receives an update from someone you've never met.
You don't want to be like this. This is disgusting.
A piece of software you've purchased faithfully for a decade suddenly refuses to function because your subscription lapsed 3 days ago. The product remains, the access does not. And the strangest part is that none of this feels particularly shocking anymore. We've become accustomed to this bullshit. Conditioned, perhaps. But they're actually a symptom of the same shift. A transformation so gradual that most people never noticed it occurring. Because somewhere along the way, we stopped buying things. Not literally, of course. The money still changes hands. Oh yeah, those greedy fucks will take your money happily.
Give me money. Money me. Money now. Me a money needing a lot now.
But ownership quietly gave way to access. Possession became permission. And permission, by its very nature, can always be revoked. The transition from physical media to digital media wasn't just a technological revolution, it was a philosophical one. And whether we realized it or not, it fundamentally changed our relationship with the things we thought belonged to us. This is digital media, the illusion of ownership. Now, there was a time when ownership was a remarkably uncomplicated concept. You bought a thing, that thing became yours. That was the entire fucking system. No login, no account, no verification code sent to a phone number you stopped using 6 years ago. Just ownership.
Behold! My stuff.
A deceptively simple arrangement that humanity maintained for so long we stopped noticing it exist at all. Take a look around the world that came before digital media. Books lined shelves, vinyl records sat in fucked up milk crates, VHS tapes occupied entire walls of living rooms like magnetic monuments to questionable taste, CD binders traveled between cars like sacred texts, PC games arrived in oversized cardboard boxes containing enough manuals, maps, inserts, and promotional bullshit to qualify as light literature.
I ain't reading this shit.
But honestly, we were spoiled back then. Physical media was everywhere. Not because people were nostalgic, not because technology hasn't advanced yet, but because ownership required an object, a thing you could point at, a thing you can hold, a thing that continued existing whether a corpo approved of it or not. And perhaps more importantly, there was a shared understanding attached to that object. If you bought a book, the publisher couldn't break into your house and revise chapter 7 because public opinion had shifted. If you bought a VHS tape, the studio couldn't remove a scene after a licensing dispute.
I would like you to accompany me to Darking's Heart.
Look forward to it.
If you bought a CD, the record label couldn't wake up one morning and decide you were no longer authorized to hear track 4. The transaction was complete. The relationship ended. The item belonged to you. Simple. Almost suspiciously simple. Looking back, it's easy to think that the value of physical media was the physical part. The plastic, the paper, the cardboard, the magnetic tape, the shiny little discs that somehow managed to collect fingerprints from dimensions beyond our own. But the real value wasn't the object itself, it was the independence the object represented. Ownership meant permanence. Or at least as much permanence as you could expect from a species that routinely spilt soda on everything it loved.
Oh my God!
Once a book entered your collection, it became a part of your collection. Once a movie entered your shelf, it stayed there. Unless you lost it, sold it, destroyed it, or lent it to a friend who mysteriously forgot it existed for the next 8 years. The point is that the decision remained yours. Control remained yours, and that's an important distinction because ownership was never really about possession. It was about authority.
I'm the captain now.
You decided when to read the book, when to watch the movie, you decided where it lived, how long you kept it, who borrowed it, whether it gathered dust in the closet or occupied a place of honor in your living room. No company participated in that decision-making process. No terms of service needed to be consulted. No licensing agreement needed to be accepted. Groups of people couldn't bitch at it enough to make it different. No corporation remained permanently attached to the transaction like a ghost haunting your receipts.
You're telling me that every time you guys download an update for iTunes, you read the entire terms and conditions?
Of course.
Well, how do you know if you agree to something if you don't read it?
Just a product existing in peace. The physical media era wasn't perfect, of course. Tapes degraded, discs scratched, books yellowed. Storage became its own logistical nightmare. Every collector eventually discovers the horrifying reality that culture is surprisingly heavy. But those were physical limitations, mechanical problems, the price of existing in reality. The limitations were tangible, the ownership was absolute. And this wasn't viewed as a luxury. It wasn't a niche collector mentality, it wasn't a political statement, it was simply an expectation. Ownership meant control. Control meant access, and access was assumed because the item belonged to you. Nobody needed to explain the arrangement because nobody questioned it. But societal expectations have a funny habit of becoming visible only after they've disappeared. Because while books, CDs, VHS tapes, DVDs, and game boxes all look different from the surface, they share a common principle underneath. When you bought the thing, you owned the thing. Not temporarily, not conditionally, not at the discretion of future licensing agreements. You owned them. And for generations, that distinction seemed so obvious it barely warranted discussion. Then, one day, without much fanfare, we began replacing ownership with something else. Not all at once, not through legislation, and not through force, through convenience. And this is when the story starts to get interesting. The strange thing about the transformation from physical media to digital media is that nobody had to force it. There was no grand conspiracy, no coordinated effort, no shadowy boardroom where executives gathered around a glowing table and voted unanimously to fuck ownership into oblivion.
Are you fucking like that, you motherfucker? Fucking goddamn leg!
People volunteered, enthusiastically. Because, if we're being fair, digital media solved a lot of problems. Real problems. Problems that physical media collectors tend to forget whenever nostalgia starts editing footage. Let's be honest, physical media can be annoying. CDs scratched, DVD cases cracked, books took up space, VHS tapes degraded with use. Entire collections had to be packed into heavy-ass boxes every time you moved. And if you were a PC gamer in the late 90s, there was a very real possibility that half of your evening would be spent searching for a disc that definitely was on your desk yesterday and now had apparently entered the witness protection program. Then the digital age arrived, and suddenly everything became frictionless. Music transformed first. Thousands of songs compressed into tiny files. No shelves, no binders, no stacks of jewel cases threatening structural damage to your furniture. An entire music collection could fit inside your pocket. The MP3 felt miraculous because, in many ways, it was.
You can organize your files by name, date, kind, or size. Then print.
We found it. Camptown Races. 6, 5, 1, 6, 3, 6, 8,
7, 9, 6, 5, 1, 0, 7.
Why own 1,000 songs when you could access 50 million? Why buy individual albums when nearly the entire history of recorded music sat on a search bar anyway? It felt less like a new product and more like science fiction finally catching up. Movies followed. The old ritual involving driving to a store, hoping the film wasn't already rented out, bringing it home, watching it, rewinding it, and eventually returning it before it accumulated enough late fees to finance a small military operation.
Rent the video and we'll be out of here. You are not renting shit. You are not welcome in this store. Your video renting days are over. Come on, don't do that, dude.
It's not even close. I mean,
Let me get that for you.
Thanks, man.
Don't.
Then Netflix happened. Not the Netflix we know today. The original DVD by mail version. Even that felt revolutionary. And when streaming arrived, the game was over. Entire library of movies available instantly. No shelves, no discs, no clutter, no effort. A film could begin within seconds of deciding to watch it. Humanity always had a weakness for convenience, and digital media delivered convenience in industrial quantities. Gaming experienced its own transformation. For decades, buying a game meant acquiring a physical object, a box, a manual, a disc, a cartridge, something tangible. Then digital storefronts arrived. Services like Steam fundamentally changed the equation. Suddenly, games could be purchased and downloaded instantly. No trip to the store, no waiting, no inventory shortages. No hoping your local retailer actually carried the obscure strategy game designed by 12 people in Finland. The barriers vanished. Distribution became immediate. For players, it was incredible. For developers, it was revolutionary. For the industry as a whole, it was inevitable. The same pattern emerged everywhere. Books became ebooks.
I bet you like to read a lot too.
Print is dead.
Software moved to the cloud. Physical products became digital services. And to be clear, most of these changes were improvements. This is where the discussion about digital media often becomes dishonest. People pretend physical media was superior because they dislike the direction things eventually went. But that's revisionist history. Streaming is amazing. Digital distribution is amazing. Cloud services are often amazing. There is a reason these systems won. The average person wasn't manipulated into preferring them. The average person preferred them because they were genuinely more convenient. And convenience is not a trivial thing. Human civilization is essentially a continuous process of finding easier ways to accomplish the same tasks. The wheel was a convenience. The printing press was a convenience. The washing machine was a convenience. The internet was a convenience. Digital media succeeded because it reduced friction, and humans love frictionless systems. Right up until they discover what the friction was protecting them from.
I have cash. You have tea. Why don't we just streamline things?
We don't take cash, though.
Yeah. How about cards? Take cards?
Yes.
Oh, great.
But there is a $10 minimum. There's no minimum on the app, though.
Because every convenience removes something. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's dead weight. Sometimes it's a cost you didn't realize you're paying until years later. That was the bargain. We traded possession for convenience, control for accessibility, ownership for access. And because the trade seemed beneficial, almost nobody stopped to ask what if the access and ownership turned out to be very different things.
So you may have to metaphorically make a deal with the devil. And by devil, I mean robot devil. And by metaphorically, I mean get your coat.
Now, for a while, the bargain seemed flawless. The movies, music, and books were still there, and the games and software still launched. From the user's perspective, nothing appeared fundamentally different. The shelf may have disappeared, but the content remained. Case closed. Except, beneath the surface, some tomfuckery had happened. Something most people never noticed because nobody talks about it during the checkout process.
Something's fucky.
When you buy a digital movie, book, or piece of music, you often don't own it. And when you buy software, you frequently don't own the software. What you own is a license, and those are not the same thing. Now, at this point, some lawyer materializes from a cloud of paperwork and informs us that technically this has always been true. Intellectual property law is complicated. Copyright laws are complicated, and software licensing has existed for decades. All of that is true, but that's not how most people understand ownership. Because when normal human beings hear the word buy, they tend to assume it means ownership. If I buy a hammer, a chair, a book, I own it. Simple, reasonable, dangerously intuitive. The digital world operates differently, however.
Do you want to buy some stupid shit?
Oh my god, I love stupid shit.
A license is not ownership. A license is permission. Permission to access, to use, to view, and to participate. And permission comes with an interesting characteristic. It has an owner. Because the thing itself often remains connected to the institution that sold it, not physically, but contractually. The movies, books, games, and software all exist inside an ecosystem, and that ecosystem has owners, which creates a very unusual situation. Imagine you purchase a car, and then years later, the dealership remotely removes your ability to drive it because an agreement between manufacturers changed. Most people would consider that absurd, possibly criminal. Yet, something similar happens with digital media, and we often accept it as normal. A movie disappears, a television show is removed, a game is delisted, a feature vanishes, an account gets terminated. Access changes. And suddenly people discover that ownership isn't behaving the way ownership is supposed to behave. Because it wasn't ownership, it was permission.
What's up?
My name is...
I'll tell you right now, y'all ain't getting in without no free man.
What? Sir, we need to get in, cause
I'll tell you right now, you ain't getting in with them shoes.
What's wrong with my shoes?
Excuse me, sir, I'm Martin Luther King, and I'm Malcolm X, nigga. You still ain't getting in here with them shoes.
Sir, please.
$50.
What?
$50 each. You wanna get it or not?
The distinction seems small until something goes wrong. Then it becomes the only distinction that matters. The difference only becomes visible during a failure. And failure has a remarkable way of revealing who actually controls the system.
It's just you and me. Just you and me, Daisy, fighting the good fight against a broken system engineered to drive us both so crazy that we have to take days off for our mental health. Daisy?
Yes?
The Summa. It's made in America, right?
Yes, it is.
Where?
The user receives access, the platform retains control. And for years, this arrangement remained largely invisible because the platforms worked. The libraries grew, services improved, and the content expanded. Nobody questions the plumbing when the water is flowing.
I can't even conceive a visual of what you police officers did before it was developed.
We work for a living. This fascist crap makes me want to puke.
Then the cracks start appearing. Movies purchased digitally began disappearing due to licensing disputes. Books received revisions after purchase.
Why didn't you just shove a leash up my ass?
Games became dependent on servers that eventually shut down. Software transformed into subscriptions. Entire products stopped functioning because a company changed its business model. One by one, people encountered a realization that sounded ridiculous when spoken out loud. Wait, I bought this. If I bought it, why do I need permission to use it?
It all belongs to me. Everything that I see. North, south, east, and west. I caress it, 'cause I possess it.
And that question leads directly to the heart of the issue. Because the shift wasn't physical media versus digital media, that's the distraction. The shelf, the disc, the tape, those were never the important part. Those were merely containers. The real shift was philosophical. For most of modern history, ownership implied control. If you bought something, it belonged to you. In the digital age, ownership is increasingly becoming a performance. The language remained, the expectations remained, the checkout process remained, but the relationship changed. And once you start noticing that pattern, it becomes difficult not to see it everywhere. Because what happens to movies didn't stay with movies. What happened to software didn't stay with software. The same logic was spreading across the digital world. Ownership was no longer the default. Permission was. And permission, no matter how convenient, is never quite the same as control. One of the strangest consequences of digital media has nothing to do with the ownership, at least not directly. It has to do with visibility, or more specifically, the disappearance of visible culture. Walk into a home of a collector and you can learn a surprising amount about them without even exchanging a single word. The worn corners, the obscure titles, the embarrassing purchases hidden behind the more respectable ones.
Here it is, Boner Jams 03. It's a mixtape I made. All these great scenes that I was really into in the summer of 2003.
Oh.
I think you'd really dig it.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
This is Everybody Loves Raymond. That's probably not supposed to be. This is a good show. I just tape it sometime.
Every collection becomes a map of interests, obsessions, and phases the owner would rather not explain. Physical media occupies space, and because it occupies space, it demands attention. A wall of DVDs isn't just storage, it's memory. A shelf full of books isn't just merely decoration, it's a record of intellectual history. A vinyl collection isn't just music, it's evidence. Proof that at some point, a particular human cared enough about something to preserve it. A collection becomes an extension of the collector.
Remember me! Remember me!
A physical archive is identity, and perhaps more importantly, it reminds you of its existence. Every time you walk past a bookshelf, you are confronted with forgotten possibilities. Books you meant to read, books you loved, books you hated but stubbornly refused to throw away because suffering is also a form of nostalgia. Same things happen with movies. A DVD shelf constantly advertises its contents. Every title remains visible. Every film competes for your attention. You don't browse an algorithm, you browse your own decisions. And that's an important distinction, because when media became digital, something subtle disappeared. The object vanished, not the content, the object. The movies, albums, and books still exist, but the physical reminder is gone. Culture no longer occupies your environment, it occupies a menu. Thousands of films compressed into grids of thumbnails, millions of songs reduced to search results, entire libraries folded into interfaces, invisible until summoned. And while that sounds like a minor change, it fundamentally alters the relationship between people and culture.
The hunter becomes the hunted.
Because human beings are visual creatures. We remember what we see, and we engage with what remains present. The shelf creates a persistent relationship. The menu creates a temporary one. The DVD collection waits patiently. A streaming library disappears the moment you close the app. An endless procession of recommendations optimized for continuation.
Pink elephants on parade, here they come.
The objective is no longer maintaining a relationship with culture. The objective is maintaining activity. And activity is where algorithms thrive. Because algorithms don't merely organize information, they mediate discovery. This is one of the most profound changes introduced by digital media. For most of human history, finding something required intention. You walked through a bookstore, you browsed a record shop, you examined the video rental shelf. And the environment presented options, but the final decision remained yours. Today, discovery increasingly occurs through systems, recommendation engines, trending pages, personalized home screens, suggested content, curated experiences. The content hadn't disappeared, but the pathway has changed. And whoever controls that pathway gains extraordinary influence. Not necessarily over what exists, but what gets noticed. And in many ways, visibility is more important than existence. A film hidden beneath 10,000 recommendations might as well be invisible. The physical world had gatekeepers. The digital world has filters. The difference is that filters often appear neutral, invisible, automatic, and objective. But every system reflects incentives. And every recommendation is ultimately a decision. Somebody or something is deciding what appears before your eyes. The old world had shelves. The new world has feeds.
Do you want some coffee, Mr. Tully?
Do I?
Yes, have some.
Yes, have some.
Now, at a first glance, what we're about to discuss appears completely unrelated. We've spent the last 20 or so minutes talking about movies, music, books, streaming services, algorithms, digital ownership, and now suddenly we're talking about software, specifically open source software. But bear with me, because this is where the story starts revealing itself. Open source software operates on a very different philosophy than most modern digital products.
My crime is that of curiosity. I am a hacker, and this is my manifesto. Huh? Right? Manifesto? You may stop me, but you can't stop us all.
Oh, that's cool.
Cool?
Yeah, cool.
You think it's cool?
It's cool.
It's not cool. It's commie bullshit.
Instead of hiding the source code, it exposes the code. Instead of restricting modification, it encourages it. Instead of asking the user to trust a company, it allows the user to inspect the system directly. Linux is perhaps the most famous example, a free open source operating system maintained by a global community of developers, and the one I more frequently use for most tasks outside of gaming. No single corporation owns it, no single corporation controls it. No single corporation can wake up tomorrow and decide the product no longer exists. If the original developers disappear, the project can continue. If the maintainers leave, someone else can pick up where they left off. The code survives, which immediately raises a question. Why would anyone care? Most people don't inspect source code. Most people don't contribute to software projects. Most people aren't spending Saturday evenings compiling kernels by candlelight while explaining digital freedom to increasingly concerned family members.
As you can see, this is just a simple micro cassette recorder. Hook it up to the phone and drop in $5 in quarters.
Record the tones that the coins make, then hang up and get your money back.
And never again pay for a service that would be dirt cheap.
If it weren't run by a bunch of profiteering gluttons.
Remember, hacking is more than just a crime. It's a survival trait.
So, why does any of this matter? The answer is surprisingly simple: control, or more specifically, the preservation of control. Because open source emerged as a response to a fundamental concern. What happens if the owner disappears? What happens if the company goes bankrupt? What happens if support ends? What happens if priorities change? What happens if access is revoked? The code remains available because the community understands something important. Dependency is risk. The more essential a system becomes, the more dangerous it is to place its future entirely in someone else's hands. And once you recognize that pattern, you start to see it everywhere. Not just in software, in media, in archives, in culture itself. Look at preservation projects, community archives, public repositories, thousands of volunteers around the world dedicating absurd amounts of time preserving old software, websites, films, games, manuals, magazines, and digital artifacts. Entire communities exist for the sole purpose of keeping things alive after companies that created it have moved on. And at first, this seems like nostalgia, a bunch of enthusiasts refusing to let go of the past, but that's not entirely what's happening. The deeper motivation isn't nostalgia, it's continuity. They're asking the same question open source advocates ask. What happens when institutions responsible for preservation decide preservation is no longer profitable? And then suddenly everyone remembers why decentralization existed in the first place, why ownership existed, why preservation mattered, why people kept copies, why people built libraries, why archives were maintained, why communities preserve things that corporations abandoned. Not because they hated progress, not because they feared technology, because they understood a simple truth. Access controlled by someone else is never entirely yours.
What? Wait. You see, that's the great thing about timeshare. You get a little taste of luxuries you can't afford, and then share it with the people that come tomorrow.
Now, as we conclude, it is important to be clear about something. This is not an argument against streaming or digital media or cloud services or technological progress, because despite everything we've discussed, the truth remains that digital technology has given us capabilities previous generations could scarcely imagine. Entire libraries in our pockets, instant communication across continents, access to more music, films, books, software, and smut than any civilization in human history. The convenience is real, the benefits are real, and in many cases, the trade was worth making. This isn't a story about how the world got worse, it's a story about a world that got different. Because every convenience comes with a cost, not necessarily a catastrophic cost, and not necessarily an unfair cost, just a cost. And sometimes most significant costs are the ones that paid gradually enough that nobody notices the transaction taking place. The transition between physical media to digital media is one of those transitions, because the physical media was never important simply because it was physical. What mattered was what those objects represented: ownership, a simple expectation, an assumption so ordinary that previous generations barely thought about it. And that is a responsibility that previous generations distributed differently. Maybe better, maybe worse, but certainly different. The question isn't whether digital media was a mistake. It wasn't. The question isn't whether we should all return to shelves full of DVDs and binders full of CDs. Most people won't. The future has already arrived. The transition has already happened. The question is something much simpler. How much of our lives are we willing to experience on these terms? How much of our culture, our memories, our tools, our identities, our work? At what point does convenience become dependency? At what point does access become ownership's replacement rather than its companion? And perhaps most importantly, what are we no longer asking for? Because history is full of things people assumed they would always have, right up until they don't. And ownership may be one of them. The shelf disappeared, the library became an interface, the purchase became a license, the owner became a user. And somewhere along the way, permission began masquerading as possession. The question is whether we're comfortable with that arrangement, or whether we're only now realizing we agreed to it. And yeah, thank you once again for joining me on another autistic rant regarding another rabbit hole I found myself in during a bout of insomnia. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like. It genuinely helps the channel, helps the algorithm decide this video deserves to exist a little while longer, and lets me know that you've enjoyed these deep dives into strange systems shaping modern life. And if you're new here, subscribe for more video essays exploring technology, media, culture, history, and the ideas hiding underneath the stories we tell ourselves about them. Also, be sure to comment and let me know if you think the trade was worth it, if enough is being done to preserve access and ownership, or if we kicked off digital slavery. Also, be sure to check out my last video, Kaiju: The Shape of Fear, where I somehow turned Godzilla, Power Rangers, Evangelion, and a giant flying turtle into a discussion about collective human anxiety. And as always, thank you for watching. Catch you on the next one.